Good morning and welcome to the Pleasure for Health podcast, where I, Elsa Kepi, a relationship and intimacy coach, will attempt to discuss and answer some questions around relationships and how they work and maybe how they don't work, which is where we're going today. You can find out more about me and my work at my website, elsakepi.com, or directly on my coaching website, pleasureforhealth.com. I'll put those in the comments. So today I wanted to bring up an idea of the saboteur. We might be familiar with this in our lives, this sabotaging force that we often come up against, especially in intimate relationships, especially because where we're feeling we are on the edge of our comfort zone, and relationships more than anything else do take us there. They take us right to that edge, and often over that edge. And so relationships are something that we can sabotage really constantly in our lives. And the sad thing about sabotaging our intimate relationships is that we don't ever get past feeling lonely, feeling that we wish we could find the right person. And, we're kind of left with the choice of, well, I'm not good enough to be in a relationship, or, other people, nobody out there is going to be the right person for me. And we get to this kind of hopeless state, and human beings are in general, I would say, social beings. We're meant to be in groups, or in pairs, or in, small groups, family groups. And if we tend to sabotage our close relationships, we're actually cutting ourselves off from having the nourishment that we would get from these types of relationships. So why do we do this? Why do we sabotage ourselves? Why do we push someone away before they have a chance to push us away? Well, I think in a lot of times, the idea that we don't want to be hurt, that we don't want to go through the pain of being rejected, therefore we need to reject everyone first. So we all kind of understand that idea. And one thing that really is curious to me is that I've begun to look into this concept of self-esteem. And self-esteem is something that's important in relationships, because if we have a low self-esteem ourselves, we tend to attract similar frequency of self-esteem in other people. So we will attract other low self-esteem people. And if we have low self-esteem, we could say that the people that are accepting us for who we are with our low self-esteem aren't good enough for us. We would like to have someone with good self-esteem, right? So, but those people with higher self-esteem reject us, and therefore that makes our self-esteem lower. And so we kind of get in this a bit of a conundrum, because if we don't have good self-esteem, we won't attract, for long-term relationships anyway, we won't attract people of higher self-esteem. Now, I think there are some different dynamics that happen with, quick erotic relationships, or you might have a one-night stand, or even a very short, fiery relationship with someone who's quite different from you in their esteem phase. But for long-term relationships, we tend to end up with people that have similar self-esteem to us. And as many of you know, I work with, victims of emotional abuse, and often this, leads me to discuss the idea of the narcissistic person and the sort of codependent or the empathic person, the egoist person. I think I've done a podcast on that before. So both of those, even though it seems like the narcissistic person has really great self-esteem, maybe too good, I don't think you can have too good self-esteem. They portray themselves, their persona of having really good esteem of themselves. but underneath that's not the case. And they're getting attracted to and in relationship with people that just have low self-esteem and are looking to validate themselves from the outside. So they tend to attract each other. And in those types of relationships, we sabotage ourselves from getting anything more out of that, because we are with someone else who has low self-esteem that is also sabotaging, and so it's not going to lead to fulfilling intimacy. Now, if we do some of our own work, and we, work on our self-esteem, and we come to have more value of our own self, we might attract someone who is more moderate self-esteem. Maybe we have high self-esteem and we're able to, work with that. It still could be the case that you might sabotage your relationship out of the fear of getting hurt, or the fear of, the vulnerability that requires to be intimate with someone, to have a connection with someone. So just because we have really good self-esteem doesn't necessarily mean that we are going to find intimacy easy. But at least we're, aware of that we're attracting someone else who has good self-esteem, that has a good self, respect, and you at least are starting off with, a solid base on each side, on the part of each person in the relationship. But as we move into a relationship with them, we realize that, oh, maybe I'm afraid of, this person knowing something about me. I'm afraid of being, getting really close and loving this person. And what if they die? What if they leave? I'll be left, and, maybe I'll give 10 years of my life to this person and then they leave. That's like going to be very painful. It's going to be hard. So there's so much more to having an intimate relationship that requires this surrender to the unknown, this kind of surrender to trusting that things will work out. Why are we with someone? I mean, it's an interesting thing to consider why we do get in these relationship bond pairings or small groups. And a lot of why maybe typically in the past we might have been drawn to being in a marriage or being in a small family group was because it helped us survive. We needed other people to help, build a house or have the kinds of things that we need to, keep our food on the table, to have enough, adults to help raise children. So in order to survive, we needed to have these types of groups. And therefore, it wasn't so much about our own needs, erotically or sexually or, that kind of thing. It was about survival, and it was about working together in order to, have children together, to create a solid family base from which we could move out into the world and do our work in the world, knowing that we have, a home base to come home to, where other people are helping to shoulder the burden of life, if you will. And maybe nowadays we've come to this place where we think that isn't necessary. If we have a good job or we have an income, we can pay people to cook our meals. We could pay someone to clean our house. We can pay someone to look after our children. What are we actually getting from a relationship that we, can't just pay for or order in, and that's an interesting thing to think about in the modern day society. What are we looking for in intimate relationships? And perhaps our sabotaging behavior, is coming up in response to the fact that, now we don't need to rely on someone to bring home, the meat for the month. We can actually, order in and have our food delivered to us. And now I don't have to risk being close to someone and dealing with them in order to have something. And I've heard a lot of people say, why should I bother with relationships? They're hard work. and they actually are hard work. And we may balk at the possibility that that type of hard work is worth it, because we may feel that we don't have the energy for it, or we're not gonna, it's just gonna drain us. We're not gonna be able to do our work somewhere else. And I mean, to some extent, that's true. If you put a lot of energy into a relationship, you have obviously some less time to do other things. Do I feel like on the whole that we would gain a lot from working in relationships? Absolutely. I'm a relationship coach. I believe in relationships, and I believe that they help us not only survive, but actually help us to grow as spiritual and human beings. If we don't engage in any relationships, and let's say you were a millionaire and you were in your house and you just paid someone to do all your things, would you actually have any kind of existence that helped you grow as a person? Would that even be something you wanted? I don't know. But the survival aspect has gone away, and so now we are in this kind of crisis in relationships of wondering, how do we make the relationship worth anything? What are we getting out of this? Why would doing all this work of overcoming our sabotaging nature be worth it in this type of new age of relating and work and the world? So finding out why we're sabotaging ourselves. Is it because we actually want to be doing something else in the world? Maybe we're very busy, we're running a company or multiple companies, and we, in that case, I would say your relationships maybe are within your workplace. Maybe you don't want to have an intimate relationship. So this is something that you would have to think about for yourself. And if you keep sabotaging your intimate relationship, what is the scary thing about that? So you could ask yourself such a question, like, when you think of why you sabotage your relationship, what is the first thing that occurs to you? And if it's, I don't want to get hurt, or I'm scared that they'll leave me at some point, or I don't have the time for that, or I don't want to actually have someone point out my own flaws. If I live by myself, my dog loves me all the time. I don't need to have somebody else pointing out things that I need to work on. Perhaps that's, get really honest with yourself and see if there is some of that in there. And then the question to ask yourself, I think, as you move forward is, what patterns or relationships would change in your life if you became a more empowered individual, i.e., not sabotaging yourself? So if you stopped sabotaging yourself in your relationships, what would change? What if you became more empowered in your relationships? What would change? Would that mean that you would leave your current relationship? Would that mean that you would stand up for yourself? And would that mean that you would go out and get a job? Would that mean that you would, that your partner would not want to be with you because they like you the way you are? Would they want to change with you? Would there be just the possibility that everything would go sideways? Would, all of those reasons. And often we choose, you hear many people choosing to stay in a relationship in order to, just perpetuate the status quo. And I have no judgment about that, but I do believe that we need to be honest if that's what we're doing, and we need to make a clear choice to do that and realize that we have a choice. So if you're maintaining your relationship that maybe doesn't serve you fully, but you're choosing to do that, then the empowered thing to do in order not to sabotage that would be to say, I'm choosing this because I want my kids to finish their school in this area, and I'm happy with where I live, and maybe the relationship is not everything that it could be, but I want to preserve the status quo for now. And I'm going to take responsibility for the results of that, which might be that you have a loveless marriage, that you're continuing to, be like roommates in your house. But perhaps you take responsibility and say, you know what, I'm choosing this, so therefore I'm going to put the work in. And, if you're sabotaging your intimacy, then why is that? Is that a fear of, that would actually bring up all the differences, all the things that aren't working in your relationship, that you would have to actually acknowledge that you aren't suited to each other, or maybe that you are suited to each other, or maybe you have to acknowledge that you are maybe not the person you thought you were. Maybe you have to acknowledge that you are not really, as nice as you thought. Maybe you are kind of grasping. Maybe you are worried more about the income that your partner brings in than what they really want in the world. So all of these things come down to, why do you think you are sabotaging yourself? Get really honest about that. And then what things would change if you stopped sabotaging yourself? I know for me it was interesting, and it took a few years, but coming to the realization that in my relationship I was going along with the status quo, and I was actually expending a fair amount of energy to keep the status quo, and I had to actually reckon with that, because it took energy to stay in a not great relationship as well, as well as growing into a good relationship. And then realizing that I could actually do things on my own, and if I didn't have a partner, that I actually would be okay. That took a while to get to that place. And and then I did that for a while, and I was okay. And now I have a new relationship, and it's actually interesting to allow my partner to do some things for me, is again brings up some of my concerns and worries about, what if I don't know how to do stuff and they're not here? So, then I have to reckon with that. Well, do I take responsibility for learning how to, put on the generator if we lose power, or something like that, that I might just let someone else do? And so, when we get in a relationship, we can find that we don't actually take responsibility for everything. And I don't think we need to. There's a real benefit to sharing, like I said, sharing in a group and all taking a part. But then we also need to know that we are not neglecting to understand the roles of other people, and that we understand what they're bringing to the relationship. So it's a whole kind of picture of who we are and who we want to be, and can we bring those two things together? So who we think we are and who we actually are in a relationship need to match. We can't be lying to ourselves. Otherwise, we are definitely going to be sabotaging any kind of intimacy. And I see a lot of clients coming in to my practice wanting an intimate relationship, wanting to be able to share and play and feel comfortable with their partner, and not knowing how to do that, and realizing that that is a scary place, that we have to build trust in there, and that we have to slowly work, have some skill building of how to work with someone to build trust. So if you're interested in that kind of work, it is fun, it is enriching, it will definitely empower you in your relationship, and it takes time, and it can be hard, because we have to acknowledge that some of the things we do, or the things we say, or the way we do things doesn't work for our partner, same as vice versa. So we have to overcome that urge to just sabotage and say, well, you always do this, or you never do that. These are sabotaging moves that we bring up in our relationships, and we have to work very hard to take that kind of languaging and those type of defensive maneuvers out of the equation. So if you're interested in that, please do reach out. You can look up how to work with me at pleasureforhealth.com. I have a couple of online courses that you can start with. I have ways to work with me in person or online. And I'm very happy to kind of help you build some of these tools for intimacy. And hopefully that gives you some insight into why that might be important, and to really curate your relationships, and to appreciate your relationships, and to figure out for yourself, what are your relationships doing for you? and then really honoring them and respecting them for the time and the energy that you put in. So that's all I have for you today. Hopefully that was somewhat inspiring. I hope that you'll keep in touch and reach out to me if you're interested. And you can find more of my podcasts on my website, pleasureforhealth.com, as well as my blogs if you prefer to read. And please do leave a comment, drop a comment here if you enjoyed this podcast, or if you have a question about relationships that you would like me to talk about. Thank you so much. This is Ailsa Kepi, and I will talk to you next week.